good evening. It's actually good night, I guess, at this point. I'll echo, thank you for your patience. I know we said we'd be here at 9, but as you can imagine, this is a dynamic situation, lots of things to attend to, and of course, we need to get as much information as possible before we come in. We have some information to update you on. First off, I'd like to, Chief Lawson, would this be a good time to give a situational briefing?
Sure.
Yeah, do that. If you could do that, and then I'll come back in.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good evening, folks. Kevin Lawson, I'm the Incident Commander for CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3. Just a quick operational update on the current situation that we're facing with the dam. Currently, right now, on the main spillway, we are releasing 100,000 CFS, okay, cubic feet per second. That's the amount of water that we're going to keep flowing for as long as we can. The ultimate goal, we're working very closely with DWR. Those are the subject matter experts for us. We're working very closely with them. We're going to continue to maintain that goal until we can get the lake. What the goal is to get it to drop approximately 50 feet. That's 50 feet. If we can continue to do that, that's great. That brings a little bit of calm to what we're trying to accomplish here.
So 851?
Again, we are dealing with Mother Nature and a very dynamic situation that is ongoing and moving. So we're dealing with some soil erosion that is taking place on the emergency spillway. That is why we have upped the, we've increased the release of water over the main spillway to 100,000 CFS. So we didn't have any more water coming over the top of the emergency spillway. That is the goal. Because when we had water coming over the top of the emergency spillway, it was beginning to erode the ground, right? And when you start to erode the ground, then the dirt and everything else starts to roll off the hill, it starts to undermine itself. And when it's doing that, it starts working its way back towards the emergency spillway. That portion of it has nothing to do with the dam itself, large portion. But if that is not addressed and we don't take care of that and mitigate it properly, essentially what we're looking at is approximately a 30-foot wall of water that would be coming out of the lake. Not the lake draining, but a 30-foot wall of water. That is why we took the appropriate measures that we did, and the sheriff did, and implemented the evacuation process that we had going. So a couple of quick things that I would also share with you. Currently, right now, these are some numbers that I can share with all of you, is in Butte County, what we're looking at is approximately 35,000 residents under an evacuation order. Yuba County, we're looking at 65,000 underneath an evacuation order. Yuba City, 76,000 under evacuation warning. Marysville City is 12,000. Okay? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Chief. In a moment, I'll bring up Director Bill Croyle from the Department of Water Resources to make a comment, but I do want to say this. We have been getting questions from various media sources asking whether or not there has been looting or shots fired in any of the cities that we have evacuated. I can tell you that I've spoken to Chief Bill Lagrone from the Oroville Police Department, and he assures me that there is no looting going on in the city of Oroville. We think that the rumor about that probably stems from the fact that near the beginning of this incident, when we began to talk about evacuations, an individual broke into a business. That is, there's no indication that that criminal act was motivated by anything related to this particular incident. I've also spoke to the chief, Chief Mike O'Brien of the Chico Police Department. He assures me that there is no rioting or looting or anything of that nature going on in Chico. He has plenty of law enforcement officers in the city of Chico to ensure that peace is being kept. I think that anytime you take on a situation like this where you seek to evacuate thousands of people on very short notice, it can be a chaotic situation, and we understand that. But based on the reports that I've been receiving to this point, things have been going fairly well take into account how chaotic and difficult this situation is to begin with. I think I'll take an opportunity to invite Chief O'Brien up to tell you about what's going on in Chico in terms of the evacuation centers. We have a number of them open, but at this point, our evacuations are continuing, and we're moving into a situation where we have law enforcement resources patrolling the various areas that have been evacuated to ensure that the community is safe and that those places are secure. Chief?
Thank you, Sheriff. As was mentioned, my name is Mike O'Brien. I'm the Chief of Police in the City of Chico, and I do want to provide an update on the shelter situation, not only in Chico, but elsewhere in Butte County. So right now, we have shelters open in the following locations: at Camelot in Paradise, 1985 Clark Road. The Silver Dollar Fairgrounds in Chico is at capacity, so we're not taking any more evacuees there. The CMA Paradise Alliance Church is open, and that's on Clark Road, 6491 Clark Road in Paradise. The Elks Lodge in Paradise is also open. That's 1100 Elk Lane. That's off of Clark Road. The Neighborhood Church in Chico, 2801 Notre Dame Boulevard, is also open for evacuees. The Glenn County Fairgrounds in Glenn County is also open. The St. John's Church in Chico, 2341 Floral Avenue, also open, as well as the VFW in Paradise, open for evacuees as well. This is a fluid situation, obviously, and if we need to open up additional shelters, that will occur. That's being evaluated, and I will provide that, or we will provide that information as it becomes available or necessary. Most of the hotels in Chico are full, not all. So if there's anyone that wants to try to get into a hotel, I would suggest making a phone call, but most of the major hotels right now in Chico are full.
Thank you, Chief. We're also aware of the fact that anytime you try to evacuate a large number of people in a short period of time, that can cause problems with the roadways, traffic issues. So I have Lieutenant Mark Stokes, commander of the Oroville area office of the CHP, to come up and give us some information about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Mark Stokes with the California Highway Patrol. I'm the commander of the Oroville CHP area. And to give you a quick report on the conditions as far as the roadways and the closures that we currently have, as we have a number of them. I'll just start at the top. We have a closure at State Route 99 at 149, preventing traffic from coming south. We have a closure at SR 70 at 191. We have a closure on the 70 at 149. We also have a closure on 99 in Marysville area, in Center area, on 99 at 20th. And again, on the south end, we also have another closure at the 70 and 18th Street, and another one on 70 and Woodruff, to prevent traffic from coming in from the east and then continue north. As far as our exit routes, we're still encouraging traffic and people that are leaving the area to continue up either north on 99 or on the 70 to escape the area. Thank you.
So, some developments have occurred since we last talked at 9 o'clock. You may have gotten this information, but, and I think this was covered by Chief Lawson, but one of the significant things that has happened, and I'm thankful for, is that the efforts by DWR to lower the lake level by utilizing the spillway to reduce the water has been effective, and now there's no more water going over the emergency spillway. That is a very positive thing at this point. But as you also heard, although it brings some stability to the situation, There are still a lot of unknowns. We need to continue to lower the lake level, and we need to give the Department of Water Resources time to thoroughly evaluate the situation so that we can make some decisions as to whether or not it is safe to repopulate areas. I can tell you that we have staff looking at the various areas that evacuations have been ordered in, and making a determination based on better analysis as to what areas are clearly in danger and what areas may be less vulnerable. But that analysis still needs to be done, and so we're going to continue in our current status until we have some better information about whether or not it is safe to bring people back in. With that, I'd like to invite Director Bill Crow up from the Department of Water Resources to give us he's a subject matter expert in this, and I think he can give us a better idea of what the current status is with regard to the dam and the spill.
Thank you, Sheriff. Again, my name is Bill Croyle, Acting Director at the California Department of Water Resources. So tonight, to confirm the adjustments to the flood control structure, increasing the flow from 55,000 acre-feet per second up to 100,000 acre-feet allowed the department to withdraw more water faster so we could take the head off the top of the emergency spillway. The idea behind that strategy was to reduce the erosion and stop the erosion, and then now the site is starting to de-water and drain out. With the resources of Butte County Sheriff, we've been able to go out, put our geotechs and engineers in the air, and visually inspect that area in detail tonight. So we have some things we want to make sure that we get back in the morning and address those more, specifically on the ground, again, with our resources. We have developed our contingency plans, and we'll refine those as soon as we can get out with first light and look at our strategy. So resources are being brought into the area to address this concern. With the, one of the things that we're really sensitive to is the condition of the existing but damaged flood control structure that we've been all working on this week in our unified command structure with a number of agencies and experts that have been brought in to address the assessment, the monitoring, and evaluation of our current conditions, and allowing us to address some of the things that are coming up. One of the key things for us is we need to evacuate some of the water that's behind that reservoir so we can get ready for the incoming storms. Right now, the inflow into the reservoir is 40,000 CFS. We're discharging 100,000 CFS. So again, we're making additional flood control storage. We need to do that for a length of time so we can make room for the anticipated storm here later this week. If we can keep this discharge rate up and not compromise the flood control structure, then we're going to do it. If we can do that for a day, we can move out about 1.2 million acre-feet of water. So we need to get down, as indicated earlier, almost 50 feet to get at a level that we would normally operate this reservoir to at giving this kind of a year with the snowpack and our current inflow conditions. One thing I might mention, this is a very wet year. We're very aware of our snowpack and our hydrologic conditions. We want to make sure that we're looking at everything, whether it's hydrologic or weather forecasts and our condition of our infrastructure, to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure that that operates and protects the public. I think with our multi-agency approach that we've taken here, we're doing that. I think today was an example. It was a tough call to make. It was the right call to make to protect the public. Okay.
Thank you. As I told you earlier, we have had the commitment of substantial resources from both state and local partners. I've had the opportunity to converse with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services this evening. They've committed their resources. And we have Chief Segura from OES. And Chief, I'd invite you up if you'd like to provide some information as to what resources we have coming.
Okay, good evening. Kim Segura, State Fire and Rescue Chief for the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. I think the Sheriff has very eloquently identified that we've all been working very closely together, both at the local, state, federal, and including tribal agencies that are involved. Currently, as an example, the law enforcement community here in the county and the surrounding counties have better part of 250 law enforcement officers from different parts of the state, either on scene or currently en route to assist with their efforts for security and keeping things safe for us, as well as the people have evacuated. We're also working very closely with the fire agencies in the area. An example is Butte County has requested the use of 13 Type 1 swift water teams that are currently en route here to assist if necessary. There's additional engine strike teams that have been requested that will assist as well. I think besides the CAL FIRE incident management team that's here directly assisting DWR with this incident, there's another incident management team that's also going to be deploying to Butte County to assist them, and we'll continue to evaluate the situation not only in Butte County but the surrounding counties. On top of everything else, there are other places in the state they're dealing with other water as well as snow issues, and the entire resources at the local, state, and federal level are all working very closely together to make things as safe and as secure as possible. And we'd also like to thank the Red Cross for their assistance as well. With that, I'll turn it back to the sheriff and go from there.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. So, folks, as you can tell, we're still quite early on into this situation. There's still a lot of information yet to be gathered, analysis to be conducted. We are certainly doing our best to get that information gathered, analyzed, and then disseminated in a timely fashion. I certainly appreciate your cooperation and understanding and patience in this particular time. I'm very thankful to have the support of a lot of agencies and community members in this really difficult time. I recognize how tough this situation is on people. I recognize that we've had to displace a lot of people, but as you've heard tonight, we needed to do that to ensure the public safety, and that's the most important thing. That's the fact. That's the thing that we will continue to focus on going forward. I guess at this point we'll take some questions if necessary.
Sure. Can you give us an update on the erosion of the emergency spillway and the repairs to it?
Well, I think I would probably better defer that to Mr. Croyle.
Mr. Croyle?
Yeah, because that is his wheelhouse. And
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sheriff. Again, now that we've been able to stop the water flowing over the emergency spillway, that stops the erosion. So again, we're in the process of doing that detailed analysis. It's gonna take us a little while to get that done. We need to have some first light, evaluate the information we have. We have a number of different agencies, the regulatory side, as well as some of our technical experts and some of our consultants that we've brought in to address as these little things come up here since this, the hole in the spillway showed up this last Tuesday. So it's gonna take us a little time to process that. There's different strategies that we're looking at, but to get those detailed strategies and put them down in the implementation plan, we are bringing resources in as we speak to make sure we have those assets on site to be able to implement those strategies as soon as we can fine tune those, agreeing what those are and then implement them.
Hey, Bill, how confident are you that you're gonna be able to pull, what did you say, 1.2 million acre feet out in a day? I mean, you must be doing a ton of damage to that main spillway.
We've,
Feasible?
well, it's a dynamic situation. That also depends on the inflow to the river. If it stays nice and dry, we can keep the flow rates up. We kind of have a bigger delta, or we can remove more water from the reservoir. If we get some wet weather, that flows into the reservoir, that means we're not gonna be able to move as much out. So the key here is we need some drier weather or some cooler weather, so to keep those inflows down while we release or discharge as much as we can at the reservoir. The key here is, again, we want to maintain the system at a rate that doesn't further degrade the infrastructure that we have. That's very important. We're in this for this, this past weekend, but we're also in this throughout the wet season. So we want to make sure that we operate and maintain the resources that we have, including the emergency spillway if we need it. That's why we want to go in, assess it, implement our control strategies, continue to monitor it, and if necessary, we will have to use it again. The idea here is we'll continue to try to dig into that reservoir, remove that water, and so that we can anticipate some of those higher flows that might come with with the spring runoff. So if we can stay up with this 100,000 CFS, we may have to adjust it up or down. We may have to reduce it significantly so we can go in and address any concerns that might pop up. Our goal is to keep those discharges up as high as we can. If we believe our infrastructure is intact and can take some additional flow, we're going to take advantage of that based on our monitoring and our technical assessments. So again, it's a dynamic situation. We're all making decisions on best available information. I think we'll be continuing our briefing to the community here and around the state. It is a wet season throughout the state, as indicated. And so the resources at the State Operations Center, again, they've actually been pretty busy here for this last storm. And so this is just one of the many things that we're all dealing with. The key for us is, again, to maintain those high releases, do that within the flood control channel. The question wasn't asked, but this flow that we have, about 100,000 CFS right now, is typical for this time of year. So we get a big inflow, we bump those flows up, it's within the reporting and the public notification process. The channel through the Oroville area is about 150,000 plus CFS. We don't like to press it to the edge if we don't have to, but in 1997, we discharged 150,000 CFS through the emergency spillway. And so again, it came up pretty close, high in the system. There was flooding in and around the valley, but we did pass water through this region with not too much trouble. So if we keep these flows somewhere between 75, 100, 130 CFS, or 1,000 CFS, then the flood control system in this region will work. When we go to using the auxiliary spillway, that gives us a little bit more concern because we can't control that release, what comes in goes out. And so what normally in a flood control reservoir season, we have this flood storage capacity, which is kind of a buffer, and that adds a factor of safety. So that's what we're working to improve right now, because we don't have a lot of stuff.
Are you also sealing with rock? There, you had discussed that earlier, that cut that you discovered earlier today, are you still sealing that with bags of rocks?
The erosion scar that came up late this afternoon, we have not been able to access that. We've only been able to access it from the air with the resources of Butte County. Again, looking at the assessment, getting the water off. So we have not physically done any corrective measures adjacent to the emergency spillway.
So you have not been dropping rocks in it?
We have not been dropping rocks.
What do you see as the biggest threat right now that you've got the water stop from going into the emergency?
Well, there's still water up against the emergency spillway. And so we want to again in making sure that this erosion scar happened for a reason, so we want to better understand that. Again, this part of the facility has never been used before. It's designed to take what we call a maximum credible flood. Almost 750,000 CFS is the cross section that particular part of the dam system, so it's not the dam, but it's part of the dam system. So the idea behind that really being able to take a huge amount of water is that kind of mega flood, but it preserves, it's designed to take a lot of water down through the system. Obviously with those flow rates, you're gonna destroy much of the Central Valley. But the dam itself will still remain intact, right? And so the integrity of the dam is not impacted, by the damage to the spillway itself, or, you know, the use, or in this case, this erosion that's occurred on the emergency spillway, right? And so the dam is solid. The control structure has been damaged. We're working to assess that, and we're already working on the redesign and recovery of that system before next year. But right now, we have had some wet weather. We're gonna have some more wet weather, and the idea is to manage our resources, you know, our physical resources, and managing those flood flows here for the next couple of months. We wanna go back in, complete our assessments, do those corrective measures on that emergency spillway, and get it ready for the potential for a future use here in the coming weeks or months.
Is
I'm
50,
curious.
is reducing the lake level by 50 feet, as I believe the incident commander said, is that 1.2 million acre feet?
No, it's about little over 500,000 acre feet of water.
Had flows, you know, been cranked up to 100,000 CFS earlier this week, would we be in this situation now? Or could you have predicted this scenario?
The event starting last Tuesday has thrown a lot of curves at, again, the group, the various agencies that are working on this. And so again, you know, once you have a damage to a structure like that, you know, it's catastrophic. And so part of that is what can we do in a very short period of time? We determined that we could not fix the hole. It was 250 feet long, 170 feet wide, and almost 40 to 50 feet deep. You don't just throw a little bit of rock in it, and then with a few hours later want to throw, 50, 60, 100,000 cubic feet per second at it. And so once we kind of worked through the math and looked at our available resources and how long we would need to keep this chute dry until we actually got it fixed, it was realized we couldn't repair it. We knew, and I think I've been messaging since Tuesday night, that we're gonna see new damage. You know, what you see today might not be what you see tomorrow. That was earlier this week. This last 24, 36 hours, the site has stabilized. You know, so the erosion downstream of the spillway is kind of stabilized. There are some things that we were worried about and implementing our contingency plans, but we had some hydrology came in a little wetter, and the storm system parked over this region of California a little longer. So we had a forecast, we're operating to that forecast, and it came in a little wetter. So we took some water over the emergencies spillway. We're glad it's there because it would have been very difficult to be able to pass that water without knowing more about the integrity of the infrastructure downstream. Because our goal is to be able to use that infrastructure throughout this wet season. So we don't want to put too much water down at any given time, so we want to maintain the integrity of that system.
What would happen if there was further erosion to the main spillway or the emergency spillway?
We're gonna roll and mitigate those measures as we see that. If there's additional erosion or on the spillway itself, again, we'll reduce the flow, assess. We're already developing additional contingency measures to reduce to the extent that we have to or want to turn off the spillway, jump into the spill, implement that corrective measure to protect really the end of that spillway where the water falls off and kind of shoots out and goes downstream. So we have developed that strategy, and soon we'll have those materials on site, should we decide that we need to deploy that.
Sorry, deploy what materials and in what way?
Well, they're designing, essentially, there's different ways to manage the lip and the velocities and the pressure differences on the end of that lip so that you don't continue to have concrete coming off. So the goal is to really, again, manage that system with flow and our control strategies, mitigation measures, so that we can kind of get on with using that facility the rest of the wet season.
I mean, can you do that? Can you take a pause, given how much water you're trying to move out in what did you say, in one day or?
Yeah, so that's the key with the decision to stay up at 100,000. The system is being monitored, highly monitored, and it's stable right now, so we're gonna dig a hole in this reservoir. So if we choose to, and feel like it's necessary to install that corrective measure, then we have time to do that. We can turn it off, install the measure, get out of the way, turn it back up.
So it's your belief that so far that at 100,000, you're not seeing much more erosion on the main?
At this time, that's true.
Excuse me,
My emergency management partners are at a point now where we're gonna have to get back to work and continue to try to mitigate this incident. Many of us will be available for comments post-meeting, but we won't be able to take any more questions, at least in this forum at this time. Thank you.
And Sheriff, you really don't know at this point how long it's gonna take before you'll have enough information to lift this mandatory evacuation.
I don't, Terry. It's still a lot of unknowns, and we're still relatively early in this situation. And we need to give Department of Water Resources an opportunity to take a closer look at what has transpired with the emergency spillway. I think it's important that we keep the level of the lake low enough so that we don't have to utilize the emergency spillway until we have a better idea. But as I said earlier, public safety is my number one concern, and ensuring the safety of thousands of people, was critical. I'm not gonna lift the evacuation order until I have a better idea about what that means and what risk that poses. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.